Mom, I'm going into surgery on Friday. I just need someone to stay with the twins for 2 days. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then my mother sighed softly, the same exhausted sigh she used whenever I disappointed her as a child. Claire, your father and I already have plans this weekend. I stood in my tiny kitchen gripping the edge of the counter while macaroni boiled behind me on the stove. Mason and Lily sat at the table coloring dinosaurs with broken crayons, completely unaware that my entire world had just tilted sideways. It's surgery, Mom, I said quietly. The doctor said I can't drive afterward, and I'll probably need help walking for at least a day or two. Can't their father take them? She asked immediately. I closed my eyes. Even after 4 years of divorce, she still acted like Daniel disappearing from our lives was somehow my personal failure. You know he moved to Arizona last year. Another silence. Then I heard dishes clinking in the background and my father's voice asking what she wanted for dinner. My mother lowered her voice slightly. Claire, we're not 20 anymore. Raising little kids is exhausting. Raising little kids. As if I were asking them to adopt my twins forever instead of watching them for one weekend, while I had a procedure that could literally affect the rest of my life. I looked over at Lily. She was humming softly while carefully coloring a purple triceratops. Mason had fallen halfway out of his chair, trying to reach the green crayon. They looked so small suddenly. Too small. I'm scared, I admitted before I could stop myself. The words slipped out quietly, embarrassingly honest. My mother didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice had turned strangely cold. Claire, everything becomes a crisis with you. The sentence landed harder than the diagnosis had. Harder than hearing the word surgery for the first time in Dr. Brooks's office 3 weeks earlier. I swallowed carefully. So that's it. Your father has a golf tournament Saturday, and I already paid for a spa package with Sharon and the girls. We can't cancel everything. Every time life gets difficult for you. Behind me, the pot boiled over onto the stove with a sharp hiss. Mason looked up immediately. Mommy, I turned off the burner fast and forced a smile onto my face before he could see the tears building in my eyes. It's okay, baby. But it wasn't okay. Not even close. My mother kept talking, her voice calm and practical now, like she was explaining why returning a sweater past 30 days wasn't allowed. You're 36 years old, Claire. You need to learn how to manage these things better. Manage these things better. I stared at the lunchboxes I had already packed for Friday morning sitting neatly beside the fridge. Turkey sandwiches. Apple slices. Tiny handwritten notes folded carefully inside because Lily liked reading them at school. I had spent the entire week trying to prepare for surgery while pretending not to be terrified for my children's sake. And somehow, even now, my parents still found a way to make me feel like an inconvenience. My throat tightened painfully. Okay, I whispered. I understand. Good. My mother replied quickly, relieved the conversation was ending. And Claire? Yeah. Try not to stress yourself out before surgery. That probably makes everything worse. Then she hung up. I stood there staring at my phone long after the screen went dark. Across the kitchen, Mason climbed down from his chair and walked toward me in his little socks. Are you sick again, Mommy? He asked softly. I knelt down carefully and pulled both twins against my chest. They smelled like crayons, soap, and peanut butter. Normal little kid smells. Safe smells. For one terrible moment, all I could think was this. What if I didn't wake up after surgery? After I tucked Mason and Lily into bed that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a yellow legal pad covered in names. Babysitters, neighbors, parents from Lily's kindergarten class. Every person I could possibly ask for help was written down in messy blue ink beside little notes and crossed out phone numbers. I called 3 babysitting agencies first. One woman apologized politely and explained they needed at least 1 week notice for overnight childcare. Another quoted a price so high I nearly laughed from exhaustion. By the third call, my voice sounded shaky even to me. I just need someone for 2 nights, I kept repeating. My surgery is Friday morning. But nobody had availability. I checked the clock on the microwave. 10:43 p.m. The twins had school in the morning, and I still had laundry sitting wet in the washing machine because I forgot to move it earlier. My lower abdomen ached with the dull pressure that had become part of my daily life these past few months. Dr. Brooks warned me not to ignore the pain anymore, But ignoring things had become a survival skill after the divorce. You ignore exhaustion, ignore loneliness, ignore panic when the electric bill comes 2 days before payday. I rubbed my eyes and stared at my phone again. There were no missed calls. No messages from my parents asking if I made other arrangements. No follow-up texts saying maybe they had been too harsh. Nothing. Upstairs, I heard Lily coughing softly through the baby monitor I still kept plugged in even though both kids were already 5 years old. Some habits stayed because they made you feel less alone. I walked upstairs quietly and found her curled sideways across the bed, one hand wrapped around a stuffed rabbit with one missing button eye. Mason was asleep upside down beside her, blankets kicked onto the floor like always. I stood there for a long moment, just watching them breathe. Children looked so peaceful when they slept, like the world had never disappointed them before. The next morning, I called my best friend Jenna during my lunch break at the dental office. She sounded devastated when she answered. "Claire, I would do it in a heartbeat, you know that. But I am in Denver until Sunday for the conference." "I know," I said quickly. "I just thought maybe you knew somebody." She was quiet for a second. "What about your parents?" I stared through the break room window at the parking lot outside, while rain slid slowly down the glass. "They are busy." Even saying it out loud felt humiliating somehow. Jenna exhaled softly. "Claire, it is fine," I interrupted before she could say anything. Sympathetic enough to make me cry at work. "I will figure it out." But by Thursday afternoon, I still had no plan. I picked the twins up from school under heavy gray skies, while Lily proudly showed me a paper turkey she made from traced handprints. Mason kept asking if hospitals gave out popsicles after surgery because that was apparently the most important detail to him. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I answered questions in a calm voice. But inside, panic had started spreading through me slowly and steadily, like cold water filling a room. That night, after dinner, I opened the freezer and realized I had spent my last $20 stocking it with microwave meals for the twins in case I came home too weak to cook. I stood there staring at the little plastic containers stacked carefully beside frozen waffles and dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. For one stupid, hopeful second, I thought maybe it was my mother calling back. It was only a reminder notification from the hospital confirming my surgery arrival time. Friday, 5:30 in the morning. I pressed the phone against my chest and suddenly realized something terrifying. I had spent so many years convincing myself I could handle everything alone that I never noticed how completely alone I actually was. Thursday evening arrived with steady rain tapping against the apartment windows and the kind of heavy gray sky that made everything feel smaller. I was standing at the sink washing strawberries for the twins' school lunches when my phone rang again. "Mom." For one hopeful second, my chest loosened. Maybe guilt finally reached her. Maybe she talked things over with Dad and realized how serious this actually was. I wiped my hands quickly on a dish towel and answered before the second ring. "Hi, Mom. Claire, where did you put your grandfather's casserole dish from Easter?" Her voice sounded distracted, casual, completely normal. I leaned against the counter slowly. "I think it is still in the pantry above the microwave." "Well, next time you borrow something, try to return it sooner. I have been looking for it all afternoon." I closed my eyes briefly. Behind me, Mason and Lily were building a blanket fort in the living room while an animated movie played softly on television. Their laughter floated into the kitchen in short, happy bursts that somehow made the conversation feel even colder. "Okay," I said quietly. "I am sorry. Also, your father mentioned you sounded upset yesterday." I waited. "You really should stop putting yourself under so much stress. That cannot be good before surgery." There it was again. Surgery reduced to stress. Fear reduced to inconvenience. I stared down at the strawberries floating in cold water. "Mom, I do not think you understand how scared I am right now." Silence. Then a sharp exhale. "Claire, women have medical procedures every day. You are acting like the world is ending." Something inside me finally cracked a little. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let the truth in. I realized my mother was never going to comfort me because comforting me had never actually been important to her. "I only asked for help with the twins," I whispered, "for 2 days. And we said no. I do not know why you keep pushing." In the background, I heard my father laugh at something on television. Then my mother lowered her voice slightly. "Honestly, your grandfather already thinks we spoil you too much." Before I could respond, another voice suddenly cut through the line. Deep. Older. Sharp with confusion. Who is spoiled too much? My grandfather. There was movement, muffled sounds, then my mother speaking too quickly. Nothing, Dad. Claire is just overwhelmed again. Give me the phone. The room around me went still. Even the twins' laughter faded into the background. I heard my mother protest softly before another pause followed. Then my grandfather's voice came through the speaker, calm and steady. Claire. My throat tightened instantly. Hi, Grandpa Walt. Why are you crying? I looked down in surprise when tears splashed silently onto the countertop. I had not even realized they were falling. I am okay. That is not what I asked. His voice softened slightly. What is going on? I hesitated because explaining it out loud suddenly felt humiliating, like admitting failure. But something about his voice made lying impossible. So I told him. About the surgery. About not finding childcare. About the agencies I could not afford. About sitting awake every night terrified something might happen to me while my children slept down the hall. I told him everything in one quiet rush while the rain kept falling outside the apartment windows. When I finished, the line stayed silent for several seconds. Then Grandpa Walt spoke very carefully. Your parents refused to help you through surgery? I swallowed hard. They have plans this weekend. Another silence. He did not sound angry yet. Somehow that was worse. Finally he said quietly, What hospital? St. Mary's. What time do you need to be there? 5:30 tomorrow morning. I see. His voice changed slightly then. Colder somehow. More thoughtful. Claire. Yeah. Do not make any more phone calls tonight. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? But before he answered, I heard my mother's voice suddenly in the background again. Nervous this time. Dad, this really is not necessary. Grandpa Walt cut her off so sharply the entire line went silent afterward. I said not another word. Then he came back to me. Get the twins packed for the weekend, sweetheart. I will be there at 5 in the morning. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, another thought pushed its way in. Insurance forms. Recovery time. Whether Mason would remember to take his inhaler before soccer practice next week. Whether Lily would cry if she woke up and could not find me Saturday morning. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and sat at the kitchen table folding tiny clothes into overnight bags while the apartment stayed silent around me. I packed carefully because it made me feel calmer. 2 pairs of pajamas for each child. Lily's stuffed rabbit. Mason's dinosaur flashlight that still worked only if you shook it twice. Their favorite cereal in little plastic containers because Grandpa Walt always forgot which one had marshmallows and which one did not. At 4:30, I gave up on coffee after realizing I had reheated the same cup 3 different times without drinking it. My stomach twisted. With nerves too badly for anything warm anyway. I stood in the bathroom under harsh yellow light, staring at my reflection while brushing my hair slowly. I looked older than 36. Tired in a permanent sort of way. There were dark circles beneath my eyes and tiny silver threads starting near my temples that I had not noticed before this year. Stress ages women quietly. No one warns you about that when you become a mother. At exactly 5:05, headlights swept across the apartment window. I froze for a second before hurrying to the door. Grandpa Walt stood in the hallway wearing a dark green flannel jacket and holding an old leather travel bag that looked almost as old as I was. His silver hair was damp from the rain outside, and he smelled faintly like coffee and cold air. You are early, I whispered. You sound surprised, he replied gently. Then his eyes moved across my face carefully. Have you slept at all? I tried smiling, but it came out uneven. A little. He looked past me into the apartment. Lunchboxes lined up neatly on the counter. Tiny sneakers by the door. Medical paperwork spread across the kitchen table beside unpaid utility bills I had forgotten to move. His expression changed slightly as he took everything in without saying a word. The kids awake yet? He asked softly. I shook my head. Not yet. Grandpa Walt stepped inside and set his travel bag near the couch. Good. Then sit down for a minute. Grandpa, you do not have to. Claire. His voice was calm but firm enough to stop me instantly. Sit. So I sat. He walked into the kitchen slowly, opened cabinets until he found mugs, then poured out the cold coffee I abandoned earlier and started a fresh pot without asking where anything was. The simple familiarity of it nearly made me cry again. After a few minutes, he placed a warm mug in front of me and pulled out the chair across from mine. Now, he said quietly, tell me exactly what the doctors said. So I did. About the tests. About the pain getting worse these last few months. About Dr. Brooks warning me not to delay surgery any longer because complications could become serious if I waited. Grandpa Walt listened without interrupting once. His weathered hands stayed folded together on the table while rain tapped softly against the windows behind him. When I finished, he looked down for several long seconds. And your parents knew all this? I nodded slowly. He leaned back in his chair afterward, jaw tightening slightly. Interesting. The words sounded strangely heavy coming from him. Before I could ask what he meant, tiny footsteps padded down the hallway. Lily appeared first, rubbing one eye sleepily while dragging her stuffed rabbit behind her. Mason stumbled out right after her with messy hair sticking in every direction. Both children stopped short when they saw Grandpa Walt sitting in the kitchen. Then Lily's face lit up instantly. Great-grandpa, she squealed before launching herself toward him. Grandpa Walt caught her easily despite his age and smiled for the first time all morning. A real smile, warm and soft around the edges. Mason climbed onto his lap next without hesitation, and suddenly the apartment felt different somehow. Safer, like the air itself had shifted. Grandpa Walt wrapped one arm around each child and looked over at me quietly. Go get dressed for the hospital, sweetheart, he said. Your babies are with me now. The drive to St. Mary's Hospital felt strangely quiet despite the rain and the early morning traffic. Grandpa Walt insisted on driving while I sat in the passenger seat, holding my insurance folder against my chest like it might somehow keep me together. In the back seat, Mason and Lily whispered to each other beneath the blanket Grandpa found in my hallway closet before we left. Every few minutes, Lily leaned forward to ask if hospitals had pancakes for breakfast. Grandpa answered every question seriously, like she was asking something important. Good hospitals usually do, he told her. Bad coffee too. That made both twins laugh softly. I watched the city pass by through streaked windows, while my stomach tightened harder with every mile. The closer we got to the hospital, the more real everything became. The surgery, the recovery, the terrifying possibility that something could still go wrong. At one red light, Grandpa Walt glanced at me. Quietly, you made copies of your paperwork? I nodded. Everything is in the folder. Good. Another pause. And your doctor? Dr. Brooks is supposed to be one of the best. Grandpa nodded once, satisfied. Then he said something so quietly I almost missed it. You should never have had to go through this alone. I looked down at my hands immediately because hearing someone finally say it out loud hurt more than pretending it did not matter. By the time we reached the hospital parking garage, dawn was just beginning to lighten the sky in pale gray streaks. Grandpa Walt parked carefully before climbing out and helping the twins with their jackets. Mason insisted on carrying my small overnight bag, even though it kept bumping against his knees while he walked. Inside the hospital lobby, everything smelled like coffee, disinfectant, and floor cleaner. Bright fluorescent lights reflected off polished tile floors while tired nurses moved quickly behind the front desk. The twins stayed unusually close to me during check-in. Lily held onto the sleeve of my sweater so tightly it stretched the fabric. Are they going to keep you overnight? She whispered. I crouched carefully in front of her despite the ache in my abdomen and tucked her damp blonde hair behind her ear. Probably just one night, sweetheart. Will it hurt? Mason asked quietly from beside her. I smiled even though my throat tightened. Not forever. The nurse called my name a few minutes later. Just hearing it echo across the waiting room made my chest clench. Suddenly, everything moved too fast. Consent forms. Plastic wristbands. Nurses explaining procedures in calm, practiced voices while I nodded along pretending I absorbed any of it. Then one of them said only one adult could walk me to pre-op. I looked automatically toward the twins first. Lily's lip trembled immediately. Mason tried to stand taller like he was protecting her somehow. Before I could say anything, Grandpa Walt stepped forward calmly. I will take her. He knelt in front of the twins afterward, his weathered hands resting gently on their little shoulders. Your mommy is going to be okay, he said firmly. And while she is getting fixed. Up, you two are stuck with me. Lily sniffled. What are we going to do? Well, Grandpa said thoughtfully, I was thinking pancakes first. Then maybe the science museum if your mother promises not to get jealous. Mason finally smiled at that. The nurse started guiding me toward the secured hallway then, and panic suddenly surged through me so fast it stole my breath. I turned back one last time. Grandpa Walt stood there with one hand resting protectively on each child while hospital lights glowed softly around them. For the first time in days, the twins did not look scared anymore. They looked safe. As the doors closed behind me, my phone buzzed inside my purse. I pulled it out quickly, somehow still hoping for something different. It was a social media notification. My mother had just posted a photo from a brunch restaurant downtown. Her mimosa glass sparkled beneath the caption, "Much-needed relaxing weekend with friends." I stared at the screen for several long seconds before locking the phone quietly and handing it to the nurse without another word. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the quiet beeping of hospital monitors somewhere nearby and the heavy ache spreading through my body like wet cement. For several long seconds, I could not remember where I was. Then the bright recovery room lights came into focus, followed by the steady sound of nurses moving through the hallway outside my curtain. Surgery. The twins. Grandpa Walt. Panic hit instantly after that. I tried pushing myself upright too fast and immediately winced. A nurse appeared beside me before I could speak. "Easy there," she said gently. "Your surgery went well, but you need to rest." My throat felt dry and scratchy. "My kids, they are fine." She smiled reassuringly while adjusting something on the monitor beside me. "Your grandfather has called the nurse's station 3 times, already asking for updates." Despite everything, I let out the smallest laugh. That sounded exactly like him. A few minutes later, the nurse handed me my phone after helping me sip water through a straw. There were 12 missed messages waiting. For one hopeful second, I thought maybe my parents finally realized how cruel they had been. But most of the messages were from Jenna checking in from Denver or automated hospital reminders. My mother had sent exactly one text nearly 4 hours earlier. "Hope everything went smoothly. No question marks. No asking if I needed anything. Nothing else." Below her message sat another social media notification. I should have ignored it. Instead, I opened it anyway. My mother had uploaded another photo. This time she sat outside some trendy rooftop restaurant smiling beside 2 women in expensive sunglasses while little plates of brunch food covered the table in front of them. My father stood behind them grinning with a golf cap still on his head. The caption read, "Perfect Saturday with perfect people." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred slightly. It was not even the brunch itself that hurt anymore. It was how easy happiness seemed for them while I lay in a hospital bed trying not to cry alone. I locked the phone quietly and turned my face toward the window instead. Rain still streaked softly down the glass outside, turning the city skyline blurry and pale. Around an hour later, Grandpa Walt arrived carrying a paper bag that smelled faintly like chicken soup and coffee. Mason and Lily followed close behind him, holding hand-drawn pictures folded carefully against their little jackets. The second Lily saw me awake, her eyes filled instantly with tears. "Mommy." She climbed carefully onto the side of the bed, while Mason pressed against my shoulder from the other side. Both children talking at once about pancakes, dinosaurs at the Science Museum gift shop, and how Grandpa accidentally called chicken nuggets chicken circles at lunch. Their voices filled the room with warmth so quickly it almost hurt. Grandpa Walt stood quietly near the foot of the bed, watching us for a moment before setting the paper bag on the counter. "Doctor says she is going to be fine," he told the twins calmly. "Tough as nails, this one." Mason looked up seriously. "Can we take her home now?" Grandpa smiled faintly. "Not yet, buddy." The twins eventually settled down enough to color quietly beside my bed, while Grandpa pulled a chair closer to mine. Up close, I noticed something different about him. Not anger exactly. Something colder. More disappointed. "You need anything from the apartment?" he asked. "No, I think everything is okay." He nodded once, but his eyes drifted toward my phone sitting beside the bed. "Your mother posted more brunch pictures today." It was not a question. I looked down immediately. "Yeah." Silence settled between us for a few seconds while Lily hummed softly over her coloring book nearby. Then Grandpa Walt leaned back slowly in his chair. "You know," he said carefully, "when your mother was 17, she got pneumonia during winter break." I frowned slightly. "I do not remember that." "Of course you do not. You were not born yet." His jaw tightened faintly. "I slept in a chair beside her hospital bed for 4 nights because she was afraid to be alone." He looked directly at me afterward, and for the first time since surgery, I saw genuine hurt in his eyes. Not for himself. For me. I cannot imagine raising a daughter who grows into someone capable of abandoning her own child this way. I stayed in the hospital for 2 nights. Grandpa Walt handled everything without once making me feel like a burden. He packed extra clothes for the twins from my apartment when Lily spilled orange juice all over herself at breakfast. He argued politely but firmly with the billing department when they accidentally charged me twice for medication. He even braided Lily's hair Saturday morning after watching a tutorial video online because apparently my daughter refused to let anyone else touch it. Every time I woke up, he was there. Sometimes sitting beside the window reading with his glasses low on his nose. Sometimes helping Mason build tiny dinosaurs out of paper cups from the cafeteria. Sometimes just quietly watching over all of us with the kind of calm presence that made the room feel steady. My parents never visited. Not once. Saturday evening, my father finally called while I was half asleep watching cartoons with the twins in my hospital bed. His voice sounded distracted, like he was calling out of obligation while doing something else. "Hey, kiddo. Heard everything went fine." I stared at the ceiling for a second before answering. "Yeah, the surgery went well." "Good. Good." A pause followed while I heard silverware clinking somewhere in the background. "Restaurant noise. Your mother said you sounded emotional the other night. But you know how she is. She does not like feeling manipulated." Manipulated. The word hit me so strangely that for a second I thought maybe I misunderstood him. "Dad," I said quietly. "I asked for help because I was scared." He sighed softly, already tired of the conversation. "Claire, every adult has problems. Your mother and I spent years sacrificing things while raising you. We deserve to enjoy our lives now." Across the room, Grandpa Walt slowly lowered the newspaper he had been pretending to read. He did not say anything yet. He just listened. I swallowed hard. "I never asked you for money. That is not the point." My father's tone sharpened slightly. "Your mother is upset because now Grandpa thinks we abandoned you." I looked over at Grandpa Walt instinctively. His face stayed perfectly calm, but something in his eyes had turned completely cold. "Did you?" I asked softly before I could stop myself. Silence. Long enough to answer everything. My father cleared his throat afterward. "Well, anyway, glad you are recovering. We will catch up sometime next week." Then he hung up. No love you. No asking to speak with the twins. Nothing. I lowered the phone slowly into my lap while the room stayed painfully quiet around me. Mason looked up first. "Was that Grandpa Doug?" I forced a small smile. "Yeah, buddy. Is he coming to see you?" Before I could answer, Grandpa Walt folded his newspaper carefully and stood up from the chair beside the window. "No," he said calmly. "He is not." The twins returned to their coloring books after that, but Grandpa walked over to the hospital window and stayed there for a long time looking out over the parking garage below. Finally, he spoke without turning around. "You know what bothers me most?" His voice stayed calm. Too calm. "It is not even that they refused to help." I stayed quiet. "It is that they somehow convinced themselves they are the victims in all this." Rain tapped softly against the glass while evening lights flickered across the city outside. Grandpa clasped his hands behind his back slowly. "Your mother used to cry if you got a fever as a little girl." His voice sounded distant now, almost confused. "You scraped your knee once riding bikes at age 8, and she carried you home 3 blocks because she thought you looked too upset to walk." He shook his head faintly. "I do not know when she became this person." Something inside my chest tightened painfully then because I realized he was grieving too. Not just for me. For the daughter he thought he raised. The next morning, the doctor finally cleared me to go home. Grandpa Walt helped gather flowers, discharge papers, tiny crayons scattered across my hospital tray, and the children's jackets while I changed slowly into sweatpants that pressed painfully against my stitches. As we prepared to leave, my phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. "Dad says Grandpa is overreacting. Maybe we should all sit down for dinner next weekend and clear the air." I stared at the text for several long seconds before showing it silently to Grandpa Walt. He read it once. Then a very strange smile crossed his face. Calm, controlled, almost thoughtful. "Oh," he said quietly. "Dinner sounds perfect." A week later, I was still moving slowly. Every step pulled faintly at my stitches, and even carrying groceries from the car left me exhausted afterward. But the apartment felt warmer somehow. Safer. Grandpa Walt had stayed with us almost every day since surgery, quietly fixing little things around the apartment that I had stopped noticing months ago. A loose cabinet hinge. The flickering kitchen light above the stove. The bathroom faucet that always leaked at night. He never announced he was helping. He just did it. By Friday afternoon, the twins had become completely attached to him. Mason followed him around asking endless questions about fishing boats and old baseball players, while Lily insisted Grandpa Walt read bedtime stories because he gave every dinosaur a different voice. Watching them together hurt in a strange way because I realized how desperately my children had needed this kind of steady love. Around 5 o'clock Saturday evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror trying to button a soft blue cardigan over my dress, while Lily sat on the counter beside me brushing her doll's hair. "Are Grandma Linda and Grandpa Doug coming tonight?" she asked innocently. My hands paused for half a second. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are they being nicer now?" Children asked impossible questions so casually. I forced a small smile at her reflection in the mirror. "I do not know yet." Dinner was at Grandpa Walt's lake house nearly 40 minutes outside the city. The same house where my mother spent every summer growing up. I had not been there in almost 3 years. The moment we pulled into the driveway beneath the tall pine trees, old memories came rushing back unexpectedly. 4th of July cookouts. Fireflies over the water. My mother teaching me how to roast marshmallows on the back patio, while Grandpa fixed fishing lines nearby. Back when family still felt simple. Inside, the dining room glowed with warm yellow light reflecting across polished wood floors. Grandpa Walt had already set the table himself. Real plates, cloth napkins, candles burning softly in the center beside a bowl of fresh peaches from the farmer's market. Everything looked beautiful in that quiet, careful way older people prepare homes when something important matters to them. My parents arrived 10 minutes later carrying a pie from some expensive bakery downtown. My mother walked in smiling too brightly, while my father acted strangely cheerful, like everyone had gathered for an ordinary family dinner instead of whatever this really was. "Claire," my mother said immediately, stepping forward with open arms. "You look much better." I let her hug me briefly because I no longer had energy for fake fights. Her perfume smelled expensive and overly sweet. "Thanks." She pulled back quickly and looked around the room. "Where are the kids?" "Outside showing Grandpa their toy boats," I answered. My father loosened his jacket and laughed awkwardly. "Well, looks like everyone survived the big family crisis." The room went very still after that. My mother shot him a warning glance, but the damage was already done. Grandpa Walt entered from the kitchen carrying a serving dish in both hands. He set it down calmly in the center of the table before looking directly at my father. "Interesting choice of words, Douglas." My father shifted uncomfortably. "I just meant everything turned out okay." Grandpa Walt smiled faintly, not warmly. "Did it?" Silence settled heavily across the dining room. Outside the windows, the lake reflected the fading orange light of sunset, while the twins laughed somewhere near the dock. My mother reached quickly for her wine glass. "Dad, can we please not turn tonight into some dramatic lecture?" Grandpa Walt pulled out his chair slowly at the head of the table and sat down with the kind of calm that made everyone else nervous instantly. "No, Linda," he said quietly. "I think tonight is exactly the night for that lecture." My father cleared his throat. "Walter, nobody abandoned Claire. We simply already had commitments." "Commitments," Grandpa repeated softly. Then he looked directly at my mother. "Your daughter was afraid she might not wake up from surgery." My mother's face tightened immediately. "That is unfair. She was exaggerating things emotionally, and you know it." Grandpa Walt stared at her for several long seconds. The disappointment in his expression hit harder than anger ever could have. "You know," he said quietly, "when Claire was 7 years old, she got pneumonia during Christmas week. You sat beside her bed crying because her fever hit 102. My mother looked down at the table instantly. "Dad." No, his voice remained calm. "I spent the last week trying to understand when exactly you stopped loving your child enough to show up when she was scared." The dining room stayed completely silent after Grandpa Walt spoke. Even the soft clinking of silverware had stopped. My mother sat frozen with one hand wrapped tightly around her wine glass, while my father stared down at his untouched plate like maybe if he avoided eye contact long enough the entire conversation would disappear. Outside the windows, the twins were still laughing near the lake, their voices drifting faintly through the evening air. That sound somehow made everything inside the room feel even heavier. My mother finally exhaled sharply and straightened in her chair. "Dad, this is ridiculous," she said quietly. "You are acting like we committed some terrible crime because we had plans for one weekend." Grandpa Walt looked at her calmly. "No, Linda. I am acting like you abandoned your daughter when she needed you most. She is 36 years old, my father interrupted quickly. At some point, people need to stop expecting everyone else to solve their problems. Grandpa Walt turned toward him slowly. Interesting. His voice stayed perfectly level. Tell me, Douglas, did Claire ask you to solve her life? My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. No, Grandpa continued softly. She asked for 2 days of help while she underwent surgery. He leaned back slightly afterward, studying both of them with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not even disappointment anymore. Clarity. And instead of helping her, he said quietly, you treated her fear like an inconvenience interrupting brunch reservations. My mother's cheeks flushed instantly. That is not fair. No. Grandpa Walt reached into the inside pocket of his flannel jacket, then, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He placed it carefully on the table between them. This is not fair either. My father frowned slightly. What is that? An updated copy of my estate plan. The room went still again. My mother blinked first. Dad. I spent the last week thinking very carefully about what kind of people I want carrying this family forward after I am gone. His eyes shifted toward me briefly before returning to them, and I realized something uncomfortable. My father shifted in his seat. Walter, come on now. No, Grandpa's voice stayed calm, but firm enough to stop him instantly. You both spent years convincing yourselves Claire was too emotional, too needy, too dependent simply because she continued showing up for people who never showed up for her. My throat tightened painfully at those words because somewhere deep down I had believed it too. My mother looked shaken now. Dad, you cannot seriously be punishing us over this. Grandpa Walt smiled faintly. Punishing you? He shook his head slowly. No, Linda. I am protecting what matters to me. He tapped the folded paper gently with one finger. The lake house will transfer to Claire when I pass away. The educational trust for Mason and Lily has already been finalized, and the remaining majority of my estate will bypass both of you entirely. My mother's face went completely pale. My father stared at him in stunned silence. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then my mother whispered, You are choosing her over your own daughter? Grandpa Walt looked at her sadly. No, Linda. His voice softened then, which somehow hurt even more. I am choosing the only person at this table who still understands what family is supposed to mean. Tears burned suddenly behind my eyes, but I kept them there. Across the room, the twins burst through the back door laughing breathlessly about some frog Mason nearly caught near the dock. Lily stopped first when she noticed the silence. Did we miss dessert? She asked carefully. Grandpa Walt looked over at them immediately, and the entire hardness in his expression softened at once. Not even close, he said gently. Then he stood up slowly and held out his hands toward the twins. Come here, you two. I think your great-grandfather suddenly feels like having peach pie by the lake. Mason and Lily ran straight toward him without hesitation. He rested one hand on each little shoulder afterward and glanced at me quietly across the dining room. In that moment, surrounded by warm light, lake water reflecting through the windows, and the sound of my children laughing beside the one person who never made them feel unwanted, something inside me finally settled for the first time in years. Not because of the inheritance, not because my parents looked shocked or ashamed, but because I finally understood something simple and permanent. The people who truly love you do not make you beg to matter. After a frightened mother begged her parents to care for her twins during a serious surgery, she discovered just how alone she truly was. While her own mother enjoyed brunch and her father dismissed her fear as drama, an elderly grandfather quietly stepped in and showed the children what real love looks like. This emotional family betrayal story follows a struggling single mother fighting to stay strong for her twins while uncovering painful truths about emotional neglect, selfish parents, and the meaning of unconditional support. As tensions rise inside this unforgettable family drama, the grandfather watches his daughter and son-in-law reveal their true character, leading to a heartbreaking dinner confrontation that changes the future of the entire family forever. Viewers who enjoy emotional family stories will connect deeply with this powerful journey about motherhood, abandonment, healing, and quiet justice. With realistic emotions, relatable struggles, and touching moments between a caring grandfather and two innocent children, this story delivers the kind of emotional payoff fans of family stories love most. If you enjoy dramatic family stories filled with betrayal, emotional revelations, and meaningful endings, this unforgettable narrative captures the painful reality of feeling unwanted by the people who should love you most. Through silence, heartbreak, and ultimately dignity, this mother learns that true family is not defined by blood alone. This is one of those deeply emotional family stories that stays with you long after it ends. Perfect for viewers who enjoy realistic family stories centered around emotional neglect, difficult parents, and inspiring moments of love and loyalty between generations. Character 1. 36-year-old white American woman. Shoulder-length blonde hair. Tired emotional eyes. Soft blue cardigan and casual jeans. Front-facing portrait. Realistic suburban mother style. Natural lighting. No jewelry. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Cinematic realism. Emotional expression. Character 2. 78-year-old white American grandfather. Silver hair. Deep-lined face. Calm, wise expression. Dark green flannel jacket. Front-facing portrait. Natural aging details. Strong protective presence. Realistic cinematic lighting. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Authentic elderly man. 1. Cinematic emotional. Confrontation inside a luxurious American lake house dining room during sunset. A 36-year-old white mother with tired emotional eyes stands protectively beside her two frightened twins, while an elderly white grandfather rises slowly from the head of the dinner table, confronting two cold, emotionally detached older parents seated across from him. The grandfather has a calm but intimidating expression filled with disappointment and authority. Warm golden sunset light reflects across polished wood floors, crystal glasses, and candles. The mother wears a soft blue cardigan and looks emotionally exhausted but strong. The twins cling close to her side. The atmosphere is heavy, silent, tense, and emotionally explosive without physical violence. Realistic facial expressions. Cinematic framing. Emotional realism. Dramatic family betrayal energy. Ultra-detailed American suburban realism. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Realistic cinematic lighting. Hollywood family drama atmosphere. High emotional tension and quiet power. 122. Early rainy morning inside a small middle-class American apartment kitchen. A 36-year-old white single mother prepares school lunches while quietly hiding fear before an important surgery. Medical paperwork and unpaid bills cover the kitchen counter beside lunchboxes and children's drawings. She wears casual jeans and a soft blue cardigan with visible exhaustion on her face. Outside the apartment window, heavy rain falls over a gray suburban neighborhood. Two small twins sit at the kitchen table coloring dinosaurs with broken crayons while completely unaware of their mother's emotional collapse. Warm kitchen lighting contrasts with the cold, rainy weather outside. Realistic details everywhere, including cereal boxes, coffee mugs, and school backpacks near the front door. Emotional loneliness and silent stress dominate the scene. Realistic cinematic composition. Natural body language. American family realism. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Soft emotional lighting. Authentic middle-class atmosphere. Quiet heartbreaking mood. 1, 2, 3. Cozy lakeside American kitchen at sunrise with an elderly white grandfather making pancakes for two happy twins. The grandfather has silver hair, deep facial lines, and a calm protective expression while wearing a dark green flannel jacket. Warm sunlight enters through large windows overlooking a peaceful lake surrounded by pine trees. The twins laugh while sitting at a wooden breakfast table covered with syrup fruit cereal boxes and crayons. The atmosphere feels safe, warm, and emotionally healing. Steam rises from coffee cups while old family photos decorate the background shelves. The grandfather moves slowly but confidently with natural elderly posture and gentle facial expressions. Realistic cinematic detail emphasizing kindness, wisdom, and unconditional love. Beautiful natural lighting. Emotional family realism. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Authentic American lake house atmosphere. Soft cinematic warmth. Emotional comfort and stability in every detail. 1, 2, 4. Dramatic, emotional family dinner confrontation during Blue Hour inside a beautiful American lake house dining room. The elderly white grandfather stands at the head of the table delivering painful truths, while the selfish older parents sit frozen in visible shock and guilt. The recovering white mother sits nearby with emotional tears in her eyes while her twins remain close beside her. Candlelight flickers across tense faces, untouched wine glasses, and expensive dinner plates. Through large windows, the dark lake reflects fading sunset colors, creating a cinematic, emotional atmosphere. The grandfather appears calm, powerful, and deeply disappointed, while the older parents avoid eye contact under pressure. Realistic body language and facial expressions. Emotional silence fills the room. Hollywood-style family drama realism. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Ultra-realistic lighting. Emotional confrontation without violence. American family tension and quiet justice. 1, 2, 5. Emotional hospital recovery room during a rainy evening in an American city hospital. A weak, exhausted 36-year-old white mother rests in a hospital bed after surgery while her twins sit close beside her holding colorful drawings and stuffed animals. An elderly white grandfather sits protectively nearby, reading quietly beneath soft hospital lighting. A glowing phone screen on the bedside table displays cheerful brunch photos posted by the absent parents, creating a painful emotional contrast. Rain streaks across large hospital windows behind the family, while distant city lights blur softly outside. Medical monitors glow gently in the dim room. The mother looks emotionally overwhelmed but comforted by the grandfather's presence. Realistic hospital details and cinematic framing. Emotional storytelling atmosphere. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Soft dramatic realism. Authentic emotional body language. Deep family betrayal and healing energy. 1, 2, 6. Peaceful cinematic ending beside a quiet American lake during golden sunset. A 36-year-old white mother stands smiling softly near the wooden dock, while her twins run happily beside an elderly white grandfather near the calm water. The grandfather wears a dark green flannel jacket and looks peaceful, fulfilled, and emotionally protective. Golden sunlight reflects beautifully across the lake's surface while pine trees sway gently in the evening wind. The mother watches her children with emotional relief and quiet healing visible on her face after surviving emotional betrayal and hardship. The twins laugh freely while holding fishing nets and skipping stones near the dock. Warm cinematic atmosphere focused on chosen family safety, love, and emotional closure. Realistic American lakeside environment. Emotional realism and natural body language. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Cinematic sunset lighting. Hollywood family drama realism. Hopeful, peaceful ending. 1, 2.